Well, I think we ought to maybe get started here, okay?
There's Jeff.
We'll get into a slow start here so other people can join us. I want to welcome everybody tonight to our program. It's brought to you by the good folks at the three farmer watershed organizations in Vermont, the Franklin Grand Isle Farmers Watershed Alliance, Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition, and the Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance. So I'm Jeff Carter. I'm with UVM Extension in Middlebury, one of the directors of the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition and their treasurer. Behind the scenes here, you know that we have Kirsten Workman in Richmond and then Catherine Davidson. Okay, so they're going to help make this a nice smooth evening tonight. I'm just here to help MC things. They're here to keep me on track. Okay. So we do have a really good agenda. We have a lot of speakers, so we're going to try to move that along. And then we have time for open discussion towards the end of the agenda. I'm not sure what you're looking at, but I see the agenda is open on Catherine's share screen. And then I see all the tiles of people who are participating.
I think people will start rolling in and.
Okay, so with that, let's start the show with some brief updates from our farmer watershed organizations. Hopefully we can recap some of the events from this past year and maybe have some insight into what we look forward to this coming year. So I'd like to start out with Scott Magnan, the Franklin Grand Isle Farmer Watershed Alliance chair, and he also owns and operates Scott Magnan's Custom Service. He's up in St. Albans. And so Scott, I think if you would like to take 10 minutes and give us an update, that would be real nice.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'm Scott Magnan, as Jeff mentioned, chair of the FWA, and happy to be here to share some of what we've done. Certainly been a different type of year. At times we feel like we're kind of stalled out, but I'm reading over the PowerPoint that Catherine helped put together. We've certainly done more than it feels we have at times, and we're actually pretty proud of some of our accomplishments. So kind of our welcoming slide. Okay, so I guess here we just kind of have our mission of what we're trying to do and accomplish. And I feel like we were able to meet those goals the past year, just providing farmers with a support network, helping with some technical assistance, provide some assessments to farmers, work on our public image as farmers, stay connected to actions in the legislature. Just yesterday, we were on a meeting with 4 of our board members with the legislature, talking about some issues, trying to give them some direction and some insight on what we've done and maybe what we think we can do. We're trying to help the farmers understand what's happening with environmental regulations and give them assistance on how they can help be part of the discussion. Working on nutrient management plan and agronomic support. One thing that stood out when I was preparing was the amount of people involved in what we do and how we can't do it without people. So we have some people that have done just fantastic work in our community, in the ag community. We're super proud to have 3 new members, Dan Larrabee, Ellis Wright, and Carrie Thompson. Dan has served as a vendor working with farmers for a number of years and he's well connected in the ag community and a supporter of agriculture. Ellis is a fairly young woman that is working on her family farm up in Enosburg, and Carrie has taken over a business as a farmer up in the Berkshire region and is trying some innovative things and strategies as far as trying to keep herself in business. So I'm proud to have all those new people. Our vice chair is Larry Jarvis. Larry's definitely been an innovator and information seeker. He's always trying to gather new ways of doing things. and we're definitely proud to have him. He was on our meeting yesterday, and we'd have a hard time moving forward without his support. Heather Darby is probably, we're lucky to have her. She's one of the hardest working agronomists in the country, and we definitely rely on her support in our community to keep the ball rolling. Wayne, since I've been on the board, has probably been the most consistent voice in our farmer category. He's been really consistent about being on board at our board meetings and trying to represent us to the best of his ability. So we really thank him for what he's done. Steve Hardy's been on the board a couple of years. He's a business owner of LD Oliver Seed. Always looks out for the best interests of his customers and is there to support his farmers and our board when he hosted some summer meetings, which you'll see in a later slide. He's been very successful implementing a lot of the practices that we work on. Nick Manning, another one that's really successfully implemented some practices. Nice to have a young person within our board. Roland's been a consistent voice up in the Lake Carmi region and brings a lot to our table with information and support to our board from that area of our county. And Tyler Webb was new last year and did a lot of work with our ecosystem services work that we had kind of started about a year or two ago. And Jeff Sanders has been a really good friend to all of us, super supportive of the ag community. He does a ton of work, and we'd be much further behind than we are now without Jeff's support. And last but not least is Catherine Davidson, who definitely keeps us organized. And we would struggle to be organized without her and keep things moving forward. So really good team, even though it's super hard to always meet regularly and try and get work done, but I'm very proud of this group. So I think ecosystem services is something our group has done quite a bit of work on. It's fallen off the radar map a little bit since COVID hit. It's just been hard to be organized, but we're really doing a lot of work that kind of could still lead up to something in this ecosystem services conversation. So it's not off the table by any means. And it's something that our group continues to try and figure out. And I think we have some strategies moving forward. So if this ever came into play, maybe there'll be some tools in place that we can use to help continue the conversation and hopefully eventually find some economic benefit to a program like that. Precision Ag, we've done a video series, which I think you could find online and talk to Catherine about. It's something I work with on a daily basis, something we've tried to promote. It goes into the ecosystem services category as a potential tool in the future. Can certainly help with some planning and management on your farm. So we continue to do some work there. Part of that work was our Precision Ag Forum held this spring, one of the last in-person events to take place in agriculture before things got shut down. So attendance had just barely started to fall off, so attendance wasn't as good as we would have liked. But our speakers were phenomenal, and we had a great discussion at the end. So hopefully we can continue to have that event in the future. Winter and summer farm meetings, our group is continue to be active there. Obviously, it's been not possible this winter, but perhaps this summer we can start it. I do want to highlight that's Tim Magnan's farm, one of our board members, and it's a really great picture to be at Tim's farm, seeing all the stuff that we work on in play, and to see someone that's very enthusiastic about his accomplishments of what he's done. His corn, as you can see there, rivals anybody's in the county. And I think his enthusiasm alone makes his corn grow an extra foot each year. So really proud of what Tim's done. So one thing that we do is, I guess we provide some information to UVM on what's happening and maybe what they can do better, and we provide a platform to have them help us figure out what we can do better. So there was a ton of farm participation this summer. It's kind of playing into a lot of the discussions we're having in our meetings. One of those is the manure injector in Lake Carmi. I got to ride around with Jimmy, check out this machine, see what it was doing, and the results were pretty favorable as far as what you didn't see behind the manure spreader. I think this has a video that goes with it that I can play while we're talking. I don't know if you can hear me. So that was mostly up in the Lake Carmi, I think exclusively in the Lake Carmi region, just trying to do a better job up in that watershed, trying to try something new, get farmers engaged in that practice. There's some stats here, and you can certainly follow up with extension if you had some more technical questions on that. But I think it's been good. The farmer engagement's been good as far as I know. I worked with one of the nutrient management planners on just the data involved, and trying to put that into their plan. So good things happening there. Okay. This project I probably know the least about, but it was a project done in coordination with 5 farmers, pretty diverse group of farmers, just trying to work with their forages, I believe grass forages in particular, mostly, to get better feed quality, to try and reduce some of those input costs, as well as imported nutrients. So it's a 3-year project that they're working on, and I would definitely forward any specifics to the UVM staff to find out some outcomes. But I think the key there is that they've got great farmer support from the community on just trying to do things better. Conservation Innovation Grant. I got to do some work with Jeff Sanders on this project. There was 30 farms. The number of acres that got covered was very high. So it was a huge impact on the amount of acres, the amount of people involved with that. So they're still working on gathering the trial information, but everything was implemented. To get everything implemented, the planner arrived I think in April, and we had to have that in the field early May, and we had to do a lot of work to get that going. But we got that done, got the seed in the ground, and Jeff was able to interseed all of those fields. And this fall, everyone got to see the results of that, and or at least the visual results. Now we're just working on the data results. But Vicky, again, I'll probably have you check with staff at UVM and they'll be presenting some more information on those results as they become available. But it's an exciting project, not a 1-year project. So we're going to continue to learn from this project, and perhaps we can have another cover cropping method in the future that we can make work. And continue to do things to our best of our ability. This slide here took me, it didn't take me by surprise, but I found it very interesting. So this is a soil health data from the CIG project that I just talked about. So they took some soil tests in all those fields. They're pretty random fields. It wasn't like they pre-selected fields. It was just what the farmers gave them to implement. Soil health numbers came out really, really high. So since I've been part of this, we always feel like we're chasing, or we're always behind trying to get to a certain point. And looking at this data, we're already on a soil health scale from these fields at a very high score. So I feel like A, our work's done really well, and B, farmers in general have done a really good job with their soil health. So we probably aren't as far behind the rest of the world as we thought we were. We're actually leading the way. And I think Vermont should be really proud of data like this when we see it, and that just recognize that we've done a good job, which we don't always get recognized for. So good job, farmers. So we're working to get more data like this. We're trying to come up with some funding to do a broader scale assessment like this one, to get some baseline data and to find out how good a job we are doing, or if we're not doing a good job, we want to know that as well. So this will give us a good metric to look at, know where we're at, exactly where we stand, and then we can find tools to move that bar even higher or sustain that success. But we want to have the information to know where we are, to figure out where we're going. So I think really good work is going on right there. And this really ties into ecosystem services, precision ag. So it's kind of a good starting point to tie all those pieces together, so we're not single-handedly moving forward in any one direction. We're tying it all together. So that's our presentation. Thank you for listening, and happy to turn the floor over to the next speaker.
Well, thank you, Scott. That's a great rundown. And I think I hear that pretty commonly. Show me the data. That's what I hear from farmers. So that's great that you're doing that. I think next up, what we're going to hear from is Brian Kemp. He's with the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition and also with Mountain Meadows Farm in Sudbury, Vermont. So Brian's been with the Farmer Coalition since the beginning, and I'd like to hear what he has to say now.
Thanks, Jeff, and thank everyone for attending this first annual meeting, I think, of the 3 farmer watershed groups. I think it's something we all can be proud of and collaborating together. The Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition was organized 7 years ago with 12 original members. They were our board of directors. We still have most of those 12 are still on the board, and a couple new ones over the years, but ranging mainly, we're 93 farm members, composed of both small, medium, and large farms. We have 42 supporting business members, 8 individuals, 2 special directors who are Jeff and Kirsten, and we're now proud to say that we have a full-time executive director, John Roberts, who most of you know. And we've also hired on recently a communications consultant, Sarah. Amongst our members, we manage over 80,000 acres of ag land in predominantly Addison, Chittenden, and Rutland County, with 37,000 acres of corn ground and 42 of hay land. And I think that pasture acres probably needs to be changed a little bit. I would have guessed a couple thousand acres of pasture. So this year has been a challenging year, as everyone knows, much of our direction in educating each other and the public and holding workshops that we normally do on our members' farms, working in very close collaboration with Extension and all of the staff here in the Middlebury office. A lot of that was put on hold. We weren't able to get to the fields. We weren't able to get organized. Hopefully 2021 snaps around and we get through this COVID and we can get back out there sharing innovative ideas and practices with each other and, educating everyone along the way. We're severely, impacted in different ways with COVID. All the dairy farmers know that firsthand with dumping milk and having fluctuating prices and demand. We had a pretty significant drought down here in southern Addison County this summer, impacting feed supplies, and that's going to be a challenge for quite a few people to get through the year and purchasing feed. I guess one positive note sticks in my mind. A lot of the diversified farms, meaning beef, pork, lamb, cheese, saw some bonuses out of COVID when the supermarkets weren't getting product and the supply chain was interrupted. A lot of people started looking for local products and reaching out to their neighboring farmers, and that was a positive sign. So we're glad for that. That definitely helped out those farmers. A lot of the work we did this summer, we started to focus our attention on just making sure that members and all farmers, not just our members, that they were getting what they needed in help with outreach towards getting some of the COVID relief money that was available through the federal government and also the state. Our directors, we have 12, as I mentioned. Our vice president is Marie Audette from Blue Spruce Farm, Peter James from Monument Farms, Tim Cahart from Cahart Brothers out in Addison, Ben Dykema from Wilson Farm, Lauren Wood from Wood Notch Farm, George Foster from Foster Brothers Farm, Lorenzo Whitcomb from North Williston Cattle Company, Dave Conant from Riverside Farm, Eric Clifford from Clifford Farm in Starksboro, Rachel Orr for East Creek Stock Farm, Ray Dykema from Deer Valley Farm, and as Jeff said, myself, Mountain Meadows Beef Farm. And so, I think the thing we're proud of this year is through a grant through the Clean Water Fund from the Agency of Ag, we were able to obtain a grant to help support employing a full-time staff member. And that, as I said earlier, is John Roberts, our executive director. And John has hit the ground running. He knows ag. He was a dairy farmer. He worked for the ag agency, for those who don't know, for several years, being an inspector. So he's walked both sides of the fence. He's got a good rational mind. He can see, he can look at things from all sides. And I think he's going to be a great asset to our organization. I know he's already done tremendous work and very involved in helping us with communication and amongst each other, farmer to farmer, and we'll be continuing that, and we'll be involved heavily through our communications with the legislative body, and also working with our communications consultant, Sarah Audette, who we also were able to obtain some other grant money to help pay for her position. And Sarah will be working, she's already revamped our website, which I encourage people to look at. We're going to do highlights on that website of members and directors, and it'll be a link for people to stay up to date on what's going on. And we're really proud of these. These was a big step for us. We were relying very heavily on Jeff and Kieran and there's, I think, a real bonus for our whole organization to have these two people on staff, and hopefully that we can reach out more to the public and help educate the public through media, social media, and get our word out there and explain what's going on. I think this organization has, struggled having the capacity to do that, with everybody being busy on their farms, and certainly Extension helped as much as they could, but this should be a real positive. Looking ahead, next year, hopefully we can get back to our workshops. We generally will host 4 to 5 minimally workshops through the summer. We've done all kinds of workshops, ranging from manure injection. There's a grassland injector down here that Severy's pull with their custom operation. That was bought through some grant money with Extension, and through, I believe it was the Clean Water Fund also. And then just other manure injection on corn ground, no-till workshops, cover crop works, you name it. We've just been trying to show and share and get all those innovative practices out there. And hopefully we get back to that and come along. We can incorporate those. We like to be the guinea pigs and try out these new things and learn from them. We also, feel it's vital to get our information from our farms into the database that the state is running. And there's so many practices going on that, are cost shared through the state and federal government, but so many more that farmers are doing out of their own pocket. And sharing that, a lot of that does not go into the overall database, information. Most of this TMDL stuff is just what the federal and state report. And we all know that there's so much more going on. We'll continue to tell our story, work with our legislators, which we've done a lot in the past, and making sure that we keep good, wholesome food out there in the supply lines with high quality and nutritious food that for everyone to be able to obtain. I would just like to say just quickly a few other things that we've been involved in over the years. We've been part of the Dairy Water Collaborative, the Ecosystem Services Working Group. Also, as Scott mentioned, we've been intricate and involved in that, and that is going to be back online, I understand, this summer. Addison County River Watch, we do some sampling on farms here in Addison County with them. And we were also on the Wetland Working Group that was organized, asked the legislative body put that together. And a few years back, the RAP Review Committee. So we're very involved. We've got a good, strong, healthy core of members and directors that all aren't afraid to jump in and help out. And I guess, without wasting more time, Kirsten's telling me I had a minute left, probably 2 minutes ago. So I'll wrap up with that and look forward to hearing from Paul Doughton and what's going on, as Paul always says, on the other side of the mountain.
All right. Hey, thank you, Brian. That was a good wrap up for the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition Group. And we are going to move right on to Paul Doughton. He's the chair of the Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance, and he resides in Barnard at his home farm. So, Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Jeff. I left my tie in the other room. I want to make sure you were the only one with a tie, Jeff. Once again, I am Paul Doughton. Have a dairy farm here that I operate with my wife and my son. And I see by the list of people on here, I got to be careful what I say because I got at least 2 relatives on the call. Brian already let the cat out of the bag. As our name suggests, our group is situated on the eastern side of the state. Our group operates on both sides of the river, so we also have a number of members from New Hampshire. In 2020, we had 53 dues paying members, the highest number we've had since our organization was formed 5 years ago. Over the past year, the same as the other two organizations, our organization has had to change in several ways. This meeting and our annual business meeting, which we held last week, are on Zoom. Is the most visible sign of the things we had to do. We've continued to meet as a board consistently throughout the pandemic, working through the technical hurdles of using Zoom and accessing the internet. We're proud to say we've managed to grow our organization's influence throughout New Hampshire and Vermont. And this organization was formed in part to give farmers on the eastern side of the state some voice in water quality arena, especially in the funding of important water quality improvements that had been on a waiting list for several years. We also want to be proactive and get in front of the water quality concerns of the watershed, as Brian says, on the other side of the mountain. I want to list some of the notable accomplishments of our group over the past year. Jennifer Byrne, who you will hear from later, from the White River Conservation District, has continued to give CRWFA administrative and organizational support and completed an overhaul of our crwfa.org website, where you can access our brand new Farmer Forum, a place for people to ask and answer questions and to weigh in on topics. We would invite anybody to explore this site and use it as a resource. I can't talk about our organization without mentioning Jed Davis. He has helped us a lot in the formation of our group, and he has worked tirelessly to get the three organizations to work together. And I guess tonight is a prime example of that. So thank you, Jed. Laura Johnson, Jennifer Colby, and Kimberly Hagan from UVM Extension have provided us and our members much needed technical assistance. The NRCS and FSA, both at the local and state level, have also been a valuable resource. So I didn't notice where the New Hampshire people on, but we're not forgetting the support of Carl Majewski from UNH Extension. And a special thanks to all of our agricultural service providers whose names I did not mention above. We just finished the third planting season for our two no-till seeders. Board member Steve Stocking, who I see is on the call, and I call him the guru of our seeders, has been instrumental in the successful use of these two pieces of equipment. This year, we took over the management of the Conservation District seeder to run one cohesive equipment rental program throughout the watershed. In this very irregular year, to put it mildly, 2020, our drill seeded over 750 acres throughout the watershed. To you guys on the western side of the state, that may not sound like a lot because some of you probably have that many acres of yourself. But for us, was quite an accomplishment. This was extensive use done. There was extensive use done to put together an instructional manual for these two pieces of equipment, which will be available to all renters next season. We appreciate the assistance of the Legal Hub run by Vermont Law School for helping to develop our rental contract for these drills. This year, we also applied for a CAP grant for an Atchison drill, a smaller no-till seeder that will be better for use with small tractors on hilly pastures and fields. We hope this drill will aid in getting grasses to grow in drier weather and make our farmers more resilient to the effect of climate change. We also continue to be involved with the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission process for the relicensing of power producing dams down through the Connecticut River. This process seems to be moving along at a rate of speed that's such a huge government action usually takes. There's at least hope that the input of those directly affected by the fluctuations in the water level on a daily basis are being heard. One very positive outcome of these efforts is that Great River Hydro, the owner of the Bellis Falls, Wilder, and Vernon dams, has agreed to shift their operation to continuous flow, which should greatly reduce the daily erosion along the banks of the river due to the rising and lowering of the water levels. Just for your perspective, that water can be raised and lowered by 4 feet in a 24-hour period. There are some farms along that river that have lost many acres of land from that, because we get dinged for erosion, but we aren't doing it ourselves. We plan to submit public comments on behalf of the QRFA when the permit is filed. We will continue to work with Connecticut River Conservancy and the Departments of Environmental Conservation for both states to make sure voices of those directly affected by the dam system are heard. Sounds like a broken record, but I put it a little more quietly than the other two gentlemen did. The payment for ecosystem service concept is still in the works, but was not given priority by the Vermont legislature this past year. The input and participation by a group of interested members from our alliance last February was helpful in informing the PES working group of our desires and goals. The White River Conservation District will be hosting more meetings regarding this topic through the winter months, and we encourage participation to shape the direction of this potential program. You will hear more from Jennifer Byrne later in this evening. We feel we have succeeded in many of the goals we set in 2020, and we expect to work this year to be a continuation of these goals. And these goals are to work collaboratively with the farming community, especially the underserved, to continue to engage with policymakers in both states, to increase member involvement, to continue to educate people on the RAPs, PES, and conservation practices. And a big one is to develop a list of agricultural contacts for members. The next goal is to open our monthly board meetings to members, which we've done, and it's getting some results, but not as many as we'd like. And the last thing is to provide a space for farmers to be heard. Thanks for your attention. I tried to get you back on schedule. And now on with the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Paul. That was a good wrap up, and sounds like you guys are very active over there. So we do appreciate that. I do remember sitting at a table when you guys were first starting, so that's kind of nice. Next up on the agenda here, we're going to hear from a couple folks about a new event that's coming up. It's this hashtag Farm24VT. I don't know if I said it right, but it's a 24-hour celebration of farming. And I think Amy Richardson with the Connecticut River Watershed Farmer Alliance and Richardson Family Farm would like to speak to that, as well as Sarah Audette, who is with Nonprofit Communications and Consulting, and she's been helping out our farmer group quite a lot recently. So Amy, I think if you can go ahead, that'd be nice.
Thanks, Jeff. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I think Sarah was going to speak first.
Yes, thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. As Jeff said, I'm Sarah Audette. I'm the communications and media consultant for the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition. And though I'm not a farmer myself, I am married to one. My husband's family has Blue Spruce Farm in Bridport. Amy and I are here to tell you about an exciting new event coming up this spring. It's called hashtag Farm24VT. It's a 24-hour social media celebration of agriculture, food, and dairy in Vermont. We're inviting farmers, agribusinesses, and others in the agriculture sector to share photos, videos, and stories to give folks in our region a behind-the-scenes look at how Vermont food gets to their tables. This is a great opportunity for farmers to share how we love and care for the land, our animals, and our community. Farm 24 VT is the project of the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition and the Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance. It is funded in part by a generous grant from the Vermont Breakfast on the Farm. And before we jump into the full details, Amy's going to talk about where the idea for this event came from and how using social media has been a transformative experience for her as a farmer. Take it away, Amy.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. Do you have slides you were going to share? So thanks everybody for coming tonight. I'm really amazed by the crowd that has turned out for this meeting. It's really heartwarming for me to see so much interest and willingness to participate from all corners of our state, I think. So anyway, I'm really excited to be part of this conversation about hashtag Farm24VT. And just in a nutshell, to give a little bit of background, I'm not a millennial, so I'll just put that out there to begin with, but I have been using social media somewhat successfully for just over a handful of years now, through the platform Instagram, to tell our farm story on behalf of our dairy co-op, which includes Cabot Creamery, and then also on behalf of our own family business. We have multi-generations here, and we have a diversified farm. And one of the biggest points that I wanted to make tonight for just kind of getting the ball rolling with our talk about this social media event is to just put out there, and I think that we all, or certainly the majority of us here tonight, know that the best and the most factual and the most realistic and the most valuable farm stories are the ones that are told by farmers ourselves. Go ahead and hit the next slide. So I have a fairly large social media network that I've built over time, and I have a number of friends, I guess we call them. Most of them are virtual friends, but some of them are actually real life friends from all over the world. And I've had some really, I'd have to say, life-changing experiences with these friends. One that stands out in my mind is a couple of farmers that came first to the Northern Hemisphere and then to the US and then to Vermont and then to my farm from their farm in New Zealand. And that was just an amazing afternoon we spent together, and it wouldn't have happened without our connections that we had made on social media. Here's a picture of myself and two women that I've met through social media. They're both farmers and they live in Cumbria in England. And I was lucky enough to go a couple of years ago and visit several farmers that I've met through social media. So the point here is that through an event like Farm24VT, we're able to build connections and to begin building relationships as we tell our farm stories, because there's a wealth of people out there who are so curious about what we're doing on our farms, along with other farmers who can really see eye to eye with what we're doing and are eager to build friendships and connections and relationships. Next. Sorry. Oh, there we go. So in the UK, they do an annual event called hashtag Farm24. And through my network of friends over there, I've been able to sort of witness or observe this annual event. Theirs happens in the summertime, and it's really grown beautifully over a handful of years or so. It takes place across all sectors of agriculture and across the entire country, really. It has a different sort of a model than what we're looking at right now as we begin our adventure with Farm24VT. But over there, it's been something that has grown with people being interested in participating, and then people being interested and able to watch and observe and learn by using the hashtag Farm 24. And as it says on the slide, just this last year in 2020, in a 24-hour period, the event was able to reach over 110 million folks as an audience. So, you know, Sarah and I are keeping our goals reasonable, and we're not thinking we're going to hit that many in the first year, but being a social media campaign, we're really quite sure that the capacity of it is really huge. I think that's it, right, Sarah? Back to you. Oh yeah. Well, here's here's a little example of a recent Instagram post that I made. So I've started using the hashtag Vermont, or hashtag Farm24VT, excuse me. And so after witnessing this event in the UK for a number of years, I thought about how cool it would be if it could happen in Vermont. And that's sort of the way I go about things. I really tend to jump into something that I'm excited or passionate about, and sometimes have to figure out the details at a later point. But I did approach some folks at Vermont Breakfast on the Farm and learned about the grant opportunity. And then I approached my friend John Roberts, who I know has some strong British connections himself, and he found it very interesting. And pretty soon we were pretty excited to come up with the idea of applying for the grant from Breakfast on the Farm as a collaborative project between the Watershed Alliances, and then using that leverage to bring in farmers from all over the state, especially the other organized Farmers Watershed Alliance group, along with all sectors of agriculture across Vermont.
Great. And so speaking of those details, hang on, let me get that slide. There we go. So Farm 24 VT is set to begin bright and early at 5 a.m. on May 12th and run through 5 a.m. on May 13th. Throughout this 24-hour period, the Vermont ag community will be sharing photos, videos, and stories showing the passion, commitment, and hard work that goes into producing food and other farm products in our state. So if you're a farmer, or your business or organization supports farmers or plays any role in getting Vermont foods from the farm to the table, then you're invited to Farm 24 VT. We welcome farmers of all products and methods. We welcome ag professionals that help farmers thrive. So folks like veterinarians, agronomists, nutritionists, mechanics, and more. We also welcome manufacturers and processors and the truckers and retailers who are responsible for transporting and selling Vermont farm products. As Amy mentioned earlier, Farm 24 in the UK reached more than 100 million people last year. Our goal is not quite that high, but it's still lofty. We're hoping to reach nearly 2 million folks. That's individuals and families in Vermont, New England, New York, and beyond. We're really trying to reach anyone who's curious about Vermont agriculture. We're of course trying to reach foodies and food lovers. And we're also imagining that educators all the way from pre-K to K-12 into post-secondary schools might find ways of incorporating Farm 24 VT into their curriculum. And to keep their eyes glued to their screens, we'll also be giving away a prize each hour of the event to one lucky individual or family watching from home, school, or work. So you might be wondering, how can I get involved? And it's really simple. You can head to our website at farm24vt.com and take the pledge. Taking the pledge means that you're planning to share some social media content at some point during our event. Then we encourage you to share your pledge. We want you to let the world know that you're planning to Farm 24 VT and help us spread the word. You can download and print our selfie template, snap a photo, and post it to your social media accounts with the hashtag Farm24VT, just as Amy has done, as you can see in the photo there. And then of course, you can find Farm24VT on social media already. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. In exchange for your involvement, we're working on lots of resources to help all of our participants have a fun and successful Farm 24 VT. So whether you're brand new to social media or an expert user like Amy, there's going to be something for everyone. To start, we're partnering with New England Dairy to offer beginner and intermediate social media workshops, which will be free for all participants. You'll learn skills that are not only useful for Farm 24 VT, but that will carry you well into the future if using social media is something that you're wanting to start or grow at your farm or business. And I'm also really happy to announce that as of today, registration is now open for those for those workshops. Just head to our website and click on the resources tab for more information. We're also putting together a social media toolkit for our participants. It will include branded graphics, post templates, content ideas, and more. And then finally, just today, again, we launched a Facebook group for our participants. It'll be a place where you can connect with other farms and agribusinesses taking part in Farm 24 VT. You can share ideas and get support if you have questions along the way. Again, just head to the resources tab on our website for more information. And finally, I'd love to acknowledge our supporters. As we've mentioned, we've received a grant from Vermont Breakfast on the Farm. We're partnering with New England Dairy to provide these social media workshops for our partners and our participants. We're also receiving funding from Bordeaux Brothers, Feed Commodities, Laz Agricultural Service, and Philo Ridge Farm. And I'm also really excited to announce that King Arthur Baking is the first company to donate a prize for our 24-hour giveaway. So if you're really wishing that your logo were on this slide right now, I invite you to visit us on the web for more details about becoming a sponsor or donating your products to our prize giveaway. And there's some information about how to connect. Our website is farm24vt.com. Our email is farm24vt@gmail.com, and you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And that's all from us.
Wow. You guys have got a great program coming here. Amy, great idea. And Sarah, the enthusiasm and all that you bring to us is great. So thank you both. I'd like to do a quick reminder to everybody else. There is a chat box down here. If you have a question or comment, please be sure to include it there. So far, I see stuff from Kirsten and John and Amy. So if anybody else has something they'd like to question, you're welcome to put it in there. I think what we'd like to do now is to move right along and switch gears just a little bit. And this has to do with Vermont and federal agency updates. So first up, coming up, we have here Anson Tebbets. Oh, there you are, Anson, I see you. So excellent. Anson is here. He's the Vermont Secretary for Agriculture, Food, and Markets. And I think that he would like to address the group right now.
Well, thank you very much. I've been enjoying all the updates, all from, Franklin and Grand Isle and the Connecticut River Valley and also the Champlain Valley. Thank you for your continued work. We talked about storytelling and telling your story. I'm pretty excited about this May event, talking about Vermont agriculture. Just be authentic, learn from Amy and all the crew about what you can do, because you have an incredible story to tell. And there's a number of stories I heard, the soil health data that we heard from Franklin County is just impressive. The manure injection is a wonderful story of how you've advanced over the last couple of years. All those wonderful stories that you can tell through this group in May, and spread the word, form partnerships outside of your networks. Get together with chambers of commerce, your development folks, your tourism network, your downtowns. They're all partners. They're all facing some of the same hurdles that you're facing of trying to sustain themselves in a very challenging time. I really appreciate a couple of notes. We really appreciate through this COVID, how gracious and understanding you've been to our staff, allowing us to continue our work for the most part. We did have a few moments where we had to shut down and regroup and figure out what we were going to do. But you're invited into your farms. We know you're trying to keep yourself safe, your family safe, your workers safe, and keep agriculture moving. And really thank you for that work, as we had to do some of our regulatory and our technical and our financial assistance work. But we appreciate all our farmers and the watershed groups for letting us to do that. We had some good news to share. We have our annual report that just came out last week, and farms are 96% of the reported pea reductions this year. I know this is the largest of any sector. So that is really impressive. You continue to do the work that needs to be done. 1/3 acres of the corn in Vermont was cover cropped in fiscal year 2020. So you continue to adapt, change, and that is impressive work. So again, consistent data. We're in a world where we want data and science to drive our decision making, and you guys are stepping up. You're putting your resources to that as well. You're adapting what you're doing in the field, and we appreciate all that work that's been done over the last few years. We have ramped up some of our enforcement on some of our farms that have not been complying. We have laws that we do have to follow, and as you know, a lot of people are watching our work and your work, and so we continue to do that work. It's part of our mission that we have to do. Just to go through the process a little bit with you, if we get a complaint from the public or anyone, we do need to go out and inspect and look at that. If we do find some discharges, direct discharges, we have to refer that to ANR, the Agency of Natural Resources, and then the ANR agency could refer that to the Attorney General. That's the process. That's the work that we are mandated to do, and we continue to do that. I do owe you an apology of some of our work that we have done and not done recently. We have experienced some delays in reporting back to farms. We've been working on that process. We've had some meetings lately internally about that to make some improvements. We're not going to make any excuses. We need to do better on that. We're committed to do that. We've had some challenges with staff turnover, but we have addressed those. During COVID, we had some financial situations that we didn't know where we were going to head with the state budget, and there were some hiring freezes, and we had some vacancies that we needed to fill. We are pleased to announce that we have gotten past that, and we're able to fill those positions now that things have stabilized a little bit, and we'll be hiring 3 new staff this week. So that should help alleviate some of the backlog and reporting back to you. So again, we need to do better. We have pledged to do better. And if we're not doing an adequate job of that, please reach out to me or Deputy Eastman or anyone on our staff. If things, pick up the phone, drop us a line, and we'll try to do a better job on that. We know that there's some timelines on some LFO permit amendments that have been challenging. We began to look at that process. Again, we need your input on how to make that a better process as well. And some of these are just focused on permit amendments that may be a little clunky. Again, as you know, state government can be a little clunky, and there's some bureaucracy that we need to work through. But we are trying to work through some of those issues to get to a better place on that, especially with our amendments to some of our LFO permitting amendments. We want to also mention on the economic front some of the things that we have been working on over the fall and also late summer. We were able to capitalize on some of the COVID relief grants, and the agency managed a number of those on the state level. We were able to get out about $26 million to the agriculture economy through these grants. We know that that did not meet all the need that was out there. We hope it was a bridge to get you to a better place. And on the federal level, we were pleased to see that through USDA and the Farm Services Agency, they kicked out about $75 million with some of the direct payments in the agriculture economy. We'll continue to work on issues related to the economy and the agriculture economy. The governor has pledged to work on some of the infrastructure needs. I think it was mentioned earlier in the presentation about folks standing up some other businesses because of COVID. One of those is meat processing. We know meat processing is not in a great place right now. They've been going nonstop through COVID, but the governor has pledged about $3 million to the Working Lands Enterprise Board. That's a historic amount of money that we hope to get through the legislature. That's a $3.5 million program. When normally in a good year, we only have about $600,000 to distribute statewide. The governor has proposed in his budget that we up that by $3 million, and we may be able to address some of those infrastructure needs. Also can be used for dairy, anything that relates back to the working lands is eligible for that, in the forestry sector as well. So we'll continue to work on some of those economic issues that are important. A couple other things that are in the works. The RRPs are being revised. I encourage you to keep your eye on that through your watershed groups, in particular, the technical service providers. That is going to be addressed. Reach out to Laura, our Laura DiPietro on our Orion patch, and learn more about the RAPs being revised a bit. And that comment section likely will open in late spring or early summer. Also, the BMPs will also be revised at that same time as the RAPs. So keep reaching out to those folks on updates on that, and watch your inbox on anything that's there as well. And finally, I just want to point your direction to the new Pay for Performance program that is underway. We are seeking applications now. You should contact Sonia Howlett with us, and Sonia can be reached at the agency, and I'll give you a phone number for Sonia. We really encouraged by this program. We have received a substantial grant from USDA, NRCS. Vicki Drew has been very supportive of this, and we thank her support and the congressional delegation support on this. This all relates to some of the issues you talked earlier about soil health and also climate change. We believe that this program could be developed and also be a revenue stream for farmers in the future, above and beyond some of the regulations. This could be a system where you could receive a payment. We also are not asking you to do this free. We will also, through this program, be able to help you with the application process with some resources. So again, reach out to Sonia at 802-522-4655, 802-522-4655, talking about this Vermont Pay for Phosphorus program. And also one other thing, which I think we began talking about, how you can tell your story, and a good story that you can tell. And this evolves around climate change. There is a climate council that is now formed, and they have some really aggressive targets that they need to make to address climate change in Vermont. It's a 23-member council. I'm a member. You also have a farmer. We're fortunate enough to have a farmer on that council as well. Abby Corse is a member of that council. And we're beginning to do a subgroup of that work. They're going to take a look at agriculture and ecosystems. And we may call upon you and a number of farmers to offer us some suggestions, some advice. We're hearing from the new Biden administration in Washington that there's going to be a lot related to soil health and carbon trading and so forth. So I think there's a lot of things that may be in the works that agriculture can really help with our goals that we need to meet related to climate change and what's happening in the environment. And with that, I'm going to send it back to you again. Thank you for your continued support. Every day we wake up and hope we can do a better job at the agency. That's our commitment. We know we've got some holes that we need to fill and do a better job of. But your leadership, I'm so happy all three of you are together, and you're powerful as a group. Don't underestimate the influence you can have both at the State House and at the agency. A number of lawmakers are on the line today, and we appreciate them taking their time to join us and learn more about what you're doing in the field. And we will continue to strive to do a better job today than we did yesterday. And I'll send it back to you, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Anson. I appreciate that rundown. It sounds like we've got some good programs coming out of the state. I did sit on a meeting with Ryan Patch about this pay for performance. So there is some things that are coming out of that payment for ecosystem work group. So that's good. I think we're going to move right on now to Marley Roop. I saw Marley, there she is. And so Marley is the section chief of the Agriculture Water Quality Division for the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. So Marley, I think I'm going to go ahead and just let you have the floor.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks everyone. It's really great to be able to have a chance to talk with all of you tonight. I am definitely here mainly to listen, but I did want to share a couple things with you, and this is a great segue from what Secretary Tebbets just shared with regards to the annual report. I only have a couple slides that I want to show you just because I think you'll find it interesting to see the great work that farmers have been doing, as well as the funding that has been going into this. So let me see if I can get this going for you. First of all, for those of you that are interested in spending tons of time slogging through the internet and through 100-page reports, I do encourage you to find this one and look at it. It might be one case where it's worth your time to look into. This is the annual report that the state has to send to the legislature every year to document the state funds that are spent on clean water, not just agriculture, but also stormwater, wastewater treatment, rivers, roads. And also it documents what kind of phosphorus reductions we've attained from that money that's been spent. And the phosphorus reductions include money that's spent by NRCS as well. So I thought I just wanted to share some of this with you. I'm not sure how well you guys can see the numbers, hopefully pretty well, but these are numbers off of the last 5 years, $194 million spent by the state of Vermont alone towards clean water projects. And you can see from these graphs the different sectors that money went towards. The yellow, if you can't see the numbers or the words, is agriculture. And those of you around in different parts of the state, Paul, obviously I'm talking to you, can see where it affects you in particular ways. If you do want to take the time to go into the report, what's really cool is that you can now write down to your particular watershed, sub-watershed, and you can see these percentages, these dollars, all of the details about how this money is spent specifically and more locally. The numbers here are really stunning to see. This is the agricultural work that's been done in the state that we've been able to track over the last 5 years. And you can see the increase in numbers going from 216 up to 220, the tremendous increase in the implementation of conservation practices, of acres of lands that are treated, of barnyard improvements and livestock exclusion, all kinds of other things. This is what we are able to track. This is what is done with state money. There is also the opportunity for farmers to let us know what they are doing on their own through the Agency of Ag, and then the Agency of Ag gets the information to us and we add it to this report in DEC. So by all means, if you are willing to share what you are doing on your own, there's a process through the Agency of Ag to include that information. This is what Secretary Tebbets was referencing before, the amount that agriculture is contributing towards reducing phosphorus into Lake Champlain. The column all the way on the right is this current state fiscal year, and 28.2 metric tons of reduction. And you can see the yellow part of it is what agriculture has done, 97% of that. Now we're going to be seeing some changes in some of these colors over the next couple of years. For example, the 3-acre permit, a stormwater permit for any property that has impervious surface over 3 acres, not including agriculture. Agriculture is exempt from that. That's going to be starting to be tracked in the next couple of years, and folks are going to have to come into those permits. So we'll see more of the red box coming in there where we're able to track the phosphorus reduction from that. And we're doing a lot of work trying to quantify what phosphorus reduction value we get from natural resource projects like wetland conservation, river stabilization, things like that. So these boxes are going to change a little bit, but it's clear from not just the increase in the size of the boxes, but the percentage that agriculture is an enormous part of what we're managing to do to clean up Lake Champlain. This is just an example of some of the data that you can get when you weed down in this report to the specific sub-watersheds. You can see how much money went into different places and what different practices were done. And if you're interested at your own level, you can definitely look all this up. There's some great graphics in this report. One thing I thought you folks would find interesting to see is the outreach that's been going on over the last few years. We also ask our partners to track when they're holding workshops, when they're doing meetings, when they're doing trainings, and sharing information. This is the agricultural outreach. Obviously, in fiscal year 20, it was quite a bit lower with COVID. But what is really cool to see is that the gray bar here is UVM Extension and the amount of outreach that they've done, the substantial size of that block. And the agricultural organizations are the brown blocks in here. So there's a lot of outreach going, a lot of good training and information going on by all of our partners. So that's the main thing I wanted to share about that performance report. I think it was Kirsten who put the link in the chat. So if anyone does want to weed into it, you can get it there. If you have any questions about it or how it was pulled together, let me know and I'd be happy to share it with you. Quickly, I wanted to touch on the RCPP program. I imagine most of you are pretty familiar with that Regional Conservation Partnership Program. This is a grant that the state received about 5 years ago to increase implementation of ag and forestry practices in the Lake Champlain Basin. This grant was renewed last year for an additional 5 years and an additional $10 million. And it is now a statewide program, not limited to Lake Champlain. It's going to be quite a bit different this year, and that's the main thing I want to share with you. The contract hasn't been signed yet. There's a lot of work to do, a lot more conversations to be had, but I do want to make sure you're aware of it so that you can think on how you can help us make sure that it fits what you need. The project in the past was very limited to the NRCS programs. This is a USDA NRCS grant that we received, and the first 5 years followed the EQIP and the AL programs. So it was funding for ag and forestry practices under EQIP and ag easements and wetland easements. This next 5 years is different in that it's a separate pot of money, not attached to EQIP and AL. And frankly, we're being asked to think out of the box, to look at how EQIP, AL, wetlands, forestry, ag, everything has been managed and how it could be done differently, how we could tweak things and do them a little bit differently. And I'm going to look to all of you for help with that. Some of you have already provided it, and we're certainly looking for more of it. There's quite a bit of money available in this, $2.5 million for agriculture, $1 million for forestry, over $3 million for easements, wetland restoration. Especially important, $1.8 million for technical assistance. We've had a contract for the last 5 years with the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts to have 3 people on the ground working one-on-one with farmers, getting this project out on the street. And we will be continuing that work, but this is a lot of technical assistance money, and we'll be looking for more partners to help us get this information out and get this money out to farmers as well. There's also $700,000 that's kind of general for outreach and education, for doing additional assessments, additional monitoring, things like that. Like I said before, the important part about this is that it has to be different. It has to be creative. And we've gotten some good feedback from some of these farmer coalition groups already. So we're going to be looking at a couple different things. Ideas like paying additional incentives for stacked practices. So instead of just getting paid for cover crops, if you do cover crops and no-till and manure injection, you'll get more money than just the 3 of them individually. There's a provision in here called the land rental provision, which is a way of paying landowners to do practices in a different way. So for example, to try doing shorter season corn, which might be a little bit risky, but would allow you to get cover crops on a little bit sooner. To manage manure differently by using payments to move manure to other fields where there might be lower soil test phosphorus. Adapting corn cropping systems to be improving cover crops, but also changing planting widths and populations. Adapting pasture and hay management systems to increase diversity. Higher payments for more diverse or functional riparian buffers with different species, different densities. And also looking especially at small farms and how we can find different ways to help with the water quality issues there without having to make major infrastructure investments that can be so difficult for some of these smaller farms. We've gotten a suggestion from one of these groups about using some of these funds for more stream analysis to identify some areas of concern. We're going to be looking into that, but also we are looking at how we can better use the water quality sampling funds that DEC already has to put those in more important places and more valuable places where we can be evaluating agricultural impacts. And I know that some folks up in Franklin County, up in the Rock River watershed, some farmers up there have already volunteered to have water samples taken around their farms. And I'd be very interested if anyone else has interest in that as well. One farmer reached out to me and asked about whether or not this could cover paying for cover crops that are winter killed. He felt that this was not something that NRCS was currently able to pay for. I understand that they are able to pay for it, but if there are other issues around cover crops that are not being addressed through traditional practices, this is the kind of program where we can tweak things a little bit and do them a little bit differently. So I really appreciate folks giving some time to think about this. Like I said, we haven't even signed the contract yet, so we're going to be working on gathering more information on some of the details of this, probably over the next 6 months. And we'll be reaching out to each of you individually again to talk about this. One other thing I quickly did want to mention too, if I can stop this sharing, is a request for more information from you folks. In addition to asking for any input to RCPP, I also wanted to throw another idea out there that we are working on and would welcome any feedback on. DEC manages a very large state revolving loan fund, which is money from the EPA. And in the past, these funds have been very limited to municipalities and wastewater treatment facilities. But a couple years ago was opened up to private landowners. And so we've been trying to look at this money and see how we can be using it to help agriculture specifically. Obviously, more debt is not necessarily all that helpful, but this is a very low interest rate loan fund and may be of interest for that alone. But also I'm interested in knowing whether or not farmers think there would be value in developing a bridge loan program where it might be able to help cover some of the expenses where you are waiting for reimbursement on practices being installed, especially ones where you're putting in major infrastructure and it takes months to do and you have to pay contractors during that period of time. Because with some of these SRF funds, the state revolving loan funds, if they're paid back within a year, there's no interest at all. So there might be some interest there, and I'm not going to take the time to ask for feedback now, but welcome it in the chat and also welcome it if anyone wants to email me directly. So. And then lastly, the Clean Water Fund that has provided a lot of the money that you folks have mentioned so far through the Agency of Agriculture was cut earlier this year, but state revenues came in higher than expected. And there was an emergency meeting of the Clean Water Board last week, and some money was added to that fund, about $1.5 million. So the money that is going over to the Agency of Agriculture to continue to do the work they're doing and sharing with you is now above what it was before. So that's great news. We're glad to hear that, and looking forward to the work that they're going to continue to put, the money they're going to continue to put out to help you folks. So thank you so much for letting me be here today. I really welcome any feedback by email, phone, anything, and welcome your input into any ideas that you might have to share with us. So thanks very much, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Marley. Appreciate that rundown of all that. And RCPP is going to keep going, so that's a good thing. I just want to call people's attention to this chat box here in case you're missing it. Like Kirsten put in the link right to that clean water report there. All you got to do is click it. It'll automatically get on your browser, come back to this meeting, and then it'll be saved for you. Anson, sorry, I don't have any cornbread and chili with me, but come over, we'll have soup. Kirsten's been doing a great job putting people's email addresses in there, so you folks can be watching that as well. I think that what we'll move on to now, I see that Vicki Drew is here, and also Jill Arachi. Now, Vicki is the Vermont State Conservationist with USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service. Today we sat with her in her state technical committee meeting and heard a lot about a lot of the programs in the state, and I think NRCS brings some deep pockets to help us. Also, Jill Arachi, I'll let you guys pass it off, but Jill is the executive director for the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts. They work very closely with NRCS. So Vicki, Drew.
Thank you. I just wanted to go over a few things that I thought might be helpful to the rest of the group. And thought that I'd start with how NRCS makes decisions. I sometimes feel like farmers don't really understand our process, and even though many of you are seasoned NRCS program participants on the call tonight, there may be folks that just really don't understand the behind the scenes. So I thought I would take a little time to go through that and then finish up with some sort of updates of where we're at this year. First and foremost, I want to thank you for inviting me to talk tonight. Roberts for reaching out to me. This is such a great opportunity to have all the farmers that are really the best of the best, the cream of the crop in terms of conservationists across the state participating in this. And kudos to all of you for all your great work. So as you guys know, Congress passes a farm bill roughly every 5 years that provides a broad outline of programs to many agencies, including NRCS. So each time there's a new program that comes out, our agency drafts program regulations, allows for public comments at the national level, and then drafts internal agency policy based on those regulations. So the states at our level have to abide by this national policy and the regulations. We can seek a waiver of policy interpretations that are not explicitly tied to a regulation, and then money is allocated to each state based on a national formula that is subject to change each year. So we receive both FA and TA, financial assistance and technical assistance, and we use some of that technical assistance to enter into agreements with partners to support our work. I will tell you this year, our budget is much lower than it has been in the past. We reviewed that this morning with the State Technical Committee. Our EQIP allocation is down about 800,000 from what it was last year. And if you go back a few years when we had our special initiative that Secretary Vilsack announced in 2014 for Lake Champlain, we were up around 13 million in total for the state back in 2017, 18, and 19. And this year we're down to about 8.3 for EQIP. So big change. And we've also seen a reduction in our technical assistance funds that help pay for our staff. So I'll just put that out there. We take this money and then work through what we call our state technical committee process. Obviously, this picture was taken before COVID when we were all able to meet in person. Today, we had a state technical committee meeting virtually, and it's interesting, just like you guys are seeing with this group, we've had tremendous participation using a virtual platform. I think we had 53 people on this morning. So really excited about that. I think I figured out how to start my video. What do you know? Something just popped up. How's that? There we go. Oh my goodness. Okay. So the State Technical Committee meets about 2 to 4 times a year, and the purpose of this committee is to really advise our agency, specifically me, on how we should roll out our Farm Bill programs. And there's an opportunity to have input into the process, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's so many initiatives along the way in terms of subcommittees and other group meetings where you can provide input to us on how we run our programs. So if anybody does have any recommendations, I highly encourage you to get involved in being part of the State Technical Committee, either through your watershed groups or as an individual. They are open to the public and they are public noticed every about 2 weeks prior to the meeting. Amy Overstreet's email address is on the slide there, and you please do reach out to her if you would like to get involved in this. It's not just participating in the State Technical Committee, but also getting all of the outreach notices that NRCS puts out. And Amy's your person to look to that for. So let's see, slide down. Now my screen is frozen. Nothing is happening. Great. There we go. All right. So the State Technical Committee makes advice to me, and anything and everything from the amount of funding to be prioritized to different resource concerns like water quality on farmsteads, grazing operations, cropland, how that money should be allocated out to those different land uses, whether or not we should provide priority areas for funding like Lake Champlain or not, Paul. And we've heard from the Connecticut River farmers for many years that we've had too much emphasis on Lake Champlain. So we have changed that up in the last couple of years. And then other criteria that we can use can be like, is it a significant, what we call a significant contributor? Is there a potential for discharge within 200 feet of a stream or wetland? How vulnerable are the soils? And we also bring in local work group priorities that the conservation districts host every year, those local work group meetings. I'm going to go over a little bit more of this. This past year, so this was as of September 30th, how we spent our money in fiscal year 2020. And you can see a substantial chunk was spent toward farmstead improvements. I will point out that this past year, we saw a significant decline in the number of applications coming to us for agronomic practices in that cropland pool. And typically we're up around the $3 to $4 million statewide spent on agronomic practices, and just again saw a huge reduction. And what we do when we hit that midway through the year towards the summer, we would then take a look at how the applications had come in, look at how they were all ranked, and if we wanted to shift money from one pot to another at that point, we were able to do that. So this past year we had a higher percentage of farmstead applications than we typically see, and some of them were ranked really well. So I made the decision to move money in for what had been set aside for cropland, because we didn't have the applications, and moved it into the farmstead pool. Obviously, the last thing we want to do is send money back any one year. So we often talk about money. Marley talked about accomplishments over the last several years in the RCPP project. This is just what we did in one fiscal year, and not all of our practices, but just a subset of those. So you can see the number of units. Some things don't make sense about, like heavy use area protection is in square feet. I guess that's not so bad. I think waterways are in acres, which always kind of perplexed me as to why we measure waterways in acres. But anyhow, that's the units that were applied in one given year. Now, these don't necessarily line up with the contracts that were funded the same fiscal year, because if you guys all know, you enter into a contract, they can last 3, 5 years or even longer in some cases. And so some of this work that was done last year might have been funded several years ago. So because of what we've heard loud and clear for the last couple of years from our farmers on the other side of the mountain, this past year and again in 2021, we have stopped prioritizing farms based on proximity in the Lake Champlain Basin. And so we still have some priorities and a separate pool of money set aside for 3 watersheds, which I'll get into in a minute. But aside from that, all of the farms in the state are going to be on equal footing based on these primary criteria. And again, this is based on input that we've received through our state technical committee process. So we have a very robust tool in the background. I had originally thought that I might get into some of the details of that tool. It's called CART, Conservation Assessment and Ranking Tool. I think I would have put all of you guys to sleep pretty quickly if I had done that. So I decided to back off and just put a few graphics off to the side and let you know that all of that criteria that I talked about in the previous slide is embedded in CART in various different formats. One thing I would like to point out to you is that if we have farmers across the state applying for the exact same practice, say you're just applying for a cover crop, everything else is the same in terms of whether or not you've had other practices applied or whether or not you're going to couple that with new practices, just applying for cover crop. One thing that will rank you differently is your soils and the vulnerability of your soils. So if you're in an area that has soils with tremendous runoff potential or leaching potential, you're going to rank higher than your neighbor or somebody on another part of the state who may have less vulnerable soils if everything else was equal. So I wanted to point out that there's some basic fundamental geospatial information in our ranking tools that will sort out those higher ranked projects. So moving forward in 2021, we have a lot of initiatives underway in addition to our regular EQIP program. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about any of these. I'm hoping that everybody is aware of the work that we funded with UVM Extension, and particularly Josh Faulkner as the PI on that project, working on the paired watershed approach in Addison County. really excited about that. And next year we will begin targeting funds to the treatment watershed to make sure that we can accelerate implementation in the Dead Creek watershed as was planned. I do want to mention that I don't think anybody else has talked about this yet, but the Vermont Ag Water Quality Partnership continues to thrive. We have 9 partners that are involved in that, and we meet regularly and actually share staff. And I think it's made a huge difference in our ability to work together to collectively help all of you address your water quality challenges. And just at the last bullet, I did want to mention that Vermont NRCS is in the process of putting together a 5-year strategic plan, in part because of some of the feedback we've had. You guys know that we had this significant commitment on Lake Champlain from 2015 through 2019. So we felt like it was time to go back out to stakeholders as well as our own employees and say, okay, what should we prioritize going forward? So we're in the process of putting that together. Did want to call your attention, Marley recommended that I really include this to remind you all that we now, as of the 2018 Farm Bill, have the authority to pay for what we call our top 10 practices. And so this is across the board. You can achieve up to a 90% payment rate for these practices. Again, we have these conversations at the State Technical Committee to decide which practices need to be included. I think that the intent of Congress in putting this authority in the Farm Bill was to really give us an opportunity to target practices that have historically either been underused or that are particularly effective at addressing our particular resource concerns. So the practices listed on this list are eligible for 90% payment rate this year. I also wanted to mention a new part of the Farm Bill that's just getting underway. We don't know a lot about this, but there's going to be a new provision called EQIP incentives. And I know the word incentives is already in the acronym EQIP, so this is a little bit confusing, but it's a special component of the Farm Bill that allows us to create a new version of EQIP that is really a hybrid between EQIP and CSP. So for those farmers who have been working with us on agronomic practices and have sort of hit their cap of maybe 3 to 5 years of some of these agronomic practices and they're no longer eligible under traditional EQIP, they might want to think about this new incentive program. We're going to be likely accepting applications in mid-March. The agency is just rolling this out right now. So stay tuned for more information on this. These can be 5 to 10-year contracts in length. We can pay for some practice implementation, but could also pay for practice maintenance under this new program. So pretty excited about that, very new, and look forward to seeing how much interest there is in the state. As many people have mentioned, we anticipate that the new administration will increase focus on climate change. And for us, that may mean directive to do more work in soil health, which we're already doing a lot of. So it'll be exciting to see how that plays out. We also might be encouraged to spend more of our EQIP dollars on methane digesters as well. I'd like to switch gears for just a second if I can. And many of you remember the Secretary Vilsack commitment in 2015 where $45 million was promised to Vermont to address water quality in Lake Champlain. I'd like to give you just a little report out on what we did with that money. Many of you remember that we selected a total of 6 high priority watersheds that were targeted to really accelerate implementation. We developed very detailed action plans and worked with partners to get the work done. 2 of those are still underway, East Creek and Hungerford Brook. We've wrapped up the targeted funding on the other watersheds, with the exception of Rock River. So Rock River, Hungerford Brook, and East Creek are still what we call National Water Quality Initiative watersheds, and they get a separate pot of funding directly from the National Office for work in those areas. So we spent about 75% of our total EQIP dollars from 2015 to 2019 on Lake Champlain water quality and as part of that commitment. So you can see here how the funds were allocated to those specific watersheds. This is in millions, by the way. It's through 2019. We're still funding East Creek and Hungerford Brook. So that's why there's a little bit more data that we could add to this, but I wanted to point out that we just about exactly met that target of $45 million over that 5-year period. So pretty cool work. And then finally, I wanted to call out that this is hot off the presses, similar to the work that Marley talked about in terms of the total phosphorus reductions. This is what we know we've done to date in those watersheds in this targeted approach. So the annual phosphorus loading reduction goal shown on this slide was actually something that the local work teams decided upon themselves. This is not the total TMDL goal, but actually a subset of that the local teams decided to target. And you can see how successful we've been in terms of achieving those targets. We didn't quite meet the goal of what we had set out to do in those first 4 watersheds that were funded. We still have work to do there. But I would kudos to the East Creek team because they've exceeded their goal with only 2 years of implementation. And we will continue to prioritize projects in East Creek based on our 5-year commitment originally. And finally, I just liked it. I like putting this graphic up. It's something I've used in national talks where I've talked about our work on Lake Champlain. And I really want to help you guys understand that there is a lot of work going on. We're very fortunate to have the partnerships we have here. And more than anything, I want to thank the farmers for being part of this process because, as Anson said, we're all here to serve you and to help you get where you need to be to both address your own needs and have a sustainable farm, but also help achieve these goals for water quality on the lake. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to take any questions, any feedback you guys might have. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Vicki. Now, Jill, did you have something you wanted to mention?
I do. So yes, I got just 9 slides, I think, and I'm going to talk through them quickly, and there aren't a lot of words on there. So we were, thank you, everybody. I'm pleased to be here, and I wanted to express my feelings of admiration and gratitude for the resilience of Vermont farms, and to everyone who during this COVID crisis has really worked to support our farms through the economic challenges, especially FSA and the Agency of Ag and the farm viability folks to help farms weather this difficult period. We so admire all that you do and want to help you in any way we can. Conservation districts, there's 14 in Vermont. They are created by the Soil Conservation Act, as noted in the previous slide. We were created primarily as the partner to NRCS originally, as a means for NRCS to reach farmers at the local level. There's 14 in Vermont. I think you all probably know who your district is. They're either established by county or by watershed. Districts work in a range of natural resource fields, and this just outlines a variety of them: stormwater, agriculture, natural resources, education, outreach, forestry, and a variety of phases of work, starting with assessment, outreach and education, planning, implementation, and evaluation. These are some of the activities we do in agriculture. Just going to see that list, and now I get to the nice pictures part. So we're mostly known for, sometimes we're actually invisible. We have about 55, 60 staff between conservation districts and VACD, and because many of us sit in NRCS offices, sometimes we're indistinguishable from NRCS staff. We probably know us best through a couple of roles. One is the nutrient management planning program that's funded by our CPP through VACD, where we're partnering very closely with UVM Extension and assisting small farms. We just did a presentation on this morning. 180 small farms over the last 5 years. Another is conservation planning. These are VACD mostly planners who assist in getting farms ready for equip contracts primarily. Completing the 9-step NRCS conservation planning process. And then as facilitators of projects, helping farms access both technical assistance and financial assistance, and then sort of functioning as project managers, helping to run paper between the different agencies and helping farmers choose, who's the most appropriate partner or partners to provide funding and what their requirements are and that kind of thing. We also do natural resources restoration and conservation, and I wanted to mention this because it will be increasing in the future. We work on rivers and streams, lakes, forests, and this is some rivers and streams activities. And I wanted to mention a project where, funded by NRCS and DEC, where we're reaching out to farms where wetlands have been identified, small wetlands have been identified, and other natural resource concerns through basically desktop reviews. Let's see, we're trying to think out. The Vermont Land Trust is also involved in this. So you may get a call saying, by the way, we've noticed you have a wetland, a small wetland. Would you like to restore it or conserve it? Or is there something going on in some of your streams? So I just wanted to mention that project so that you're aware that the goal, this is a sort of non-regulatory program intended to kind of contribute to conserving natural resources and providing value to you in cases where you're either able to conserve or restore that wetland or stream bank, river bank. I wanted to talk briefly about conservation practice surveys. Farmers have told us in the dialogue about TMDLs that there's so much that you are doing yourselves that isn't being counted. So the conservation districts, UVM Northwest, UVM Middlebury, and the Champlain Valley Farmers Alliance are conducting these surveys. And this is actually from the Agency of Agriculture database. These are voluntary surveys where you report on what you did with your own funding. And the technical service provider verifies that implementation, and then it goes into the database. This is all non-regulatory. The aim is to be able to communicate to EPA what you're already doing that isn't captured by measuring grants given by NRCS or the Agency of Ag. And that activity is ramping up right now. This will continue over the next year or two, at least, as we seek to get credit for the work that you're doing in the TMDL calculation. Wanted to mention our education and outreach activities and acknowledge our our losses. And part of districts kind of straddle between landowners, the public, and farmers. So part of what we do is try to educate the public about the value of the work that farmers are doing and communicate with the public about what farmers are doing to address water quality. These are some of our numbers for fiscal year 2020. Vicki already mentioned the Vermont Water Quality Partnership. We throw the word partnership around a lot. I just wanted to give a shout out to this entity, which is a formal partnership that has an MOU. It includes all the governmental and quasi-governmental entities, everybody who's here tonight, pretty much. And part of the purpose of this partnership is both coordination and data sharing in a non-regulatory confidential way so that we can actually not fall all over each other when we're trying to assist the agricultural community. And we now have a staff person who VACD employees who assists with this coordination. That's it from me. Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you, Jill. I appreciate that. And Vicki, I like that rundown of all the funding programs that come through NRCS for us. And I would encourage people to participate in that work group that Vicki offers, the State Technical Committee. Good spot. So John Roberts is our new executive director for the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition. He wanted just a moment to say something about financial resources for farmers. And he is in the spot right between now and what I learned this morning, and that is called a bio break. So John, why don't you go right ahead, and then we're going to take a little bio break.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm sure most of you know me. I'm the executive director of the coalition as of June last year. I'm going to be extremely brief because I don't want to become between you and a bio break. I've put together, I don't have any visuals, but I put together a sheet which we will be putting on our website, which hopefully will detail and will be updated as we learn more. It details what programs from the state agency of ag. I got help from Nina Gage, the state agency of ag, NRCS, and the VHCB water quality grants. Basically, something farmers always need to know is when are the application deadlines. So that will be on the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition website, and I will be happy to share that with our partner Watershed Alliances if they want to use it. But that's it. Go for the bio break.
All right, so I guess, how about we just call the meeting back to order? And here we go. So Jennifer Byrne with the White River Natural Resources Conservation District. She's the district manager. And she'd like to talk to us about Soil Health Network and also the Payment for Ecosystem Services project that's going on. So Jennifer, I don't quite see you yet. There you are.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Welcome.
you'll probably see me if I start talking. Great.
There
Thank
you
you
go.
so
Welcome.
much. I appreciate everyone being here tonight. I want to give a little bit of background. I know we're all Watershed Farmers Alliance groups are involved in this Payment for Ecosystem Services conversation and the working group. But I will briefly go into a little bit of background for some of our members to all get on the same page of what it is that we're talking about here. So just really quickly, I'll talk a little bit about the difference between traditional conservation and payment for ecosystem services. In traditional conservation programs, as you know, you work with technical service providers to identify priorities and resource concerns. You apply and your application is then ranked. And if it ranks high enough, the farmer, you are then given financial and technical assistance in order to implement the practice. So this traditional conservation program method is based on practices and not on performance or outcomes. Whereas payment for ecosystem services are a bit different. They measure the quality of the ecosystem, and then improvements to the ecosystem is then paid for by those who are receiving the service. So the payments are provided by the beneficiaries of the service for the improvements to environmental quality. Ideally, we do this by measuring the quality of environmental resources on a farm over time. And you can imagine the challenges to doing that. So a really simple example of this, a farmer may help develop a wetland on their land, and therefore the city downstream is more resilient, has less flooding. And so the city pays the farmer for the service of flood mitigation. So that's sort of the roundabout way of thinking about this. I'm just going to leave this image up here for a second and you can take a look at it. But as in our meeting that I'll get to later on, I'll talk about this farmer discussion that we hosted last February on PES, or Payment for Ecosystem Services. And as a result of that meeting, we asked what is an ecosystem? What are the ecosystem services you provide? You know, in your mind, what does this mean? And as defined by the farmers who were participating in that, I'll just read this definition. Any service that is practice to protect natural resources and ecosystems that can be controlled by farmers, and ecosystem service is also described as a permanent state of preserving natural resources. And then also payments would be quantified by things farmers can control. Also ecosystem services promote a thriving system above and below ground. So a little bit of the background of where we are in Vermont with this conversation. Here's a timeline of events. This effort was activated by your alliances. The farmer watershed groups put together a letter, a joint letter, which I detail here on this next slide, I believe, which asked the legislature to explore the potential of developing a strategy to have a system which monitors, evaluates, and monetizes ecosystem services provided by agriculture. Each of the Farmer Watershed Alliances signed on to this, as well as University of Vermont Extension. And this did prompt legislative action. This working group was formed to recommend financial incentives for farmers in Vermont to implement agricultural practices that exceed the RAPs. And they're asking the working group to do this by identifying standards and practices that improve soil health, crop resiliency, carbon storage, storm water capacity, and limit agricultural runoff. Also to recommend any existing financial incentives that may work well or may be able to be tweaked to be turned into such a program. Then thirdly, to provide any new financial incentives, propose new financial incentives, and recommend legislative changes. So the working group did meet. This is a list of some of the members, and you'll notice that 2 Farmers Alliance members were legislatively mandated to be on the working group, but all 3 groups were represented on the working group and will continue to be. The working group last year put forward this report on their efforts, and really, they're just scratching the surface of what really needs to be done in order to develop a program like this in the state. But they do understand that it would take a shift from farming land to stewarding it, for compensating ecosystem services by paying for performance and investing in natural capital. So this report was followed up by a second letter from the Watershed Alliances, collectively supporting a bottom-up farmer-driven initiative. They reiterated that, and that they collectively endorsed the goals of the working group and the original letter to develop a system that monitors, evaluates, and monetizes ecosystem services provided by agriculture. And to develop an approach that measures whole ecosystem function. Our district last year in February held a farmer discussion which generated this report. We had a good number of folks there, almost 20 people sitting around tables, having small group discussions to answer this question of what ecosystem services do you provide? How should farmers be compensated for the ecosystem services they provide? And how does this differ from existing conservation programs? This was turned into a report that summarized the discussion compiled by the Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance and us at the White River NRCD, and was shared with the working group. And then I just have here this quick takeaway. One of the many quotes out of this report, which is, we do not want to reinvent the wheel or make a complicated, burdensome system for farmers to have to navigate, and that farmers, not regulators, should be the drivers of a PES system. And so to that end, we took that report and partnered with rural Vermont and have engaged a team of researchers at Vermont Law School's Center for Agriculture and Food Systems to help answer some of the critical policy questions raised by farmers in surveys and in these discussions. But also we are framing this conversation for in preparation for the working group meeting again, starting hopefully this February. We will be hosting a series of conversations similar to the one from last year, but with a little bit more detailed questions. Our research group at the law school has compiled basically all the information that had been given to the working group and has summarized it into a very readable report on sort of the current state of knowledge on PES. And so we hope to take some of the critical, most important questions out of that report and pose them back to you in order to keep this farmer-led, farmer-informed. And so coming soon to a conservation district near you is what I say. Not every conservation district will be hosting these meetings, but a number of us will, hopefully. And so do look out for that invitation. That may come through your Farmers Alliance, it may come through your conservation district to attend a virtual meeting on PES. So I'm going to close this screen, but I'm not quite done yet. So to that end, shifting over to the Soil Health Policy Network, in an effort to keep this and other policy initiatives truly farmer-led, there's this newly formed Soil Health Policy Network, and I would like to invite you today to participate in if you have the time and the bandwidth. We are trying to get this funded so that we can pay farmer participants. It's critical that we have farmers at the table. And so we do want to provide some type of stipend for folks who aren't otherwise paid to be there, because that's obviously a limitation. But this group, this Soil Health Policy Network group, consists of members of the Farmers Alliances, agricultural service providers, including some of the conservation districts, as well as nonprofit organizations and advocacy groups from around the state, such as NOFA Vermont, Rural Vermont, and the Vermont Healthy Soils Coalition, just to name a few. And so it was formed pretty recently to help coordinate collaboration across sectors and interest groups focused on soil health. We believe that it's especially important in these times to find common ground, to mend fences, to bridge our social divides. And so coming together around soil health, really in contrast to, or as opposed to a wider topic like water quality, focusing on soil health really keeps our meetings focused and keeps our goals clear. And we believe that by centering farmers in any conversation around the future of food and agriculture is critical. And so by doing that, we'll come up with better policies that will have the support of farming communities at large from the ground up. And so this network will be meeting monthly over Zoom. And during the meeting, we break out into 3 subcommittees: research, policy, and connectivity. The research and policy subcommittees are somewhat self-explanatory, but they are discussing initiatives related to soil and farming, with a focus on implementation of existing laws, like the newly passed Global Warming Solutions Act that was referenced earlier. And the connectivity subcommittee is focused on bringing together the people and the organizations that all work in this space, that is soil health and farming, to be sure that information is shared among all parties. And so this group is focused on connecting the dots between the overlapping programs that are meant to address soil health and educating each other on many of our varied programs and initiatives. So we're committed to increasing opportunities for listening, knowledge share, and understanding across the many stakeholders in Vermont and beyond. And so if you would like to join this growing network contact list, please let me or your Farmer Alliance rep know. My email is in the chat, whiterivernrcd@gmail.com. And I appreciate your time. I would welcome any questions too at this time, either in the chat, or if you can't find the chat, you can holler out too. We can try to sort it out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I don't see questions right now in the chat, so I think we'll just go ahead and move right along. I think our own Heather Darby, UVM Extension in St. Albans and Border View Research Farm is going to provide us an update for UVM Extension initiatives and research. Heather?
Thanks, everyone. This is great, as everyone has already said, to have our three groups together. And thank you for allowing me to give an update on some of the work that we're doing at UVM Extension. And as Scott had mentioned, and Brian Kemp, and lots of others, I mean, the projects that we do are partnerships, collaborations, and I know so much of our work here in Extension, wouldn't be as meaningful, powerful, and as easy to do if we didn't have farmer watershed organizations to collaborate with. And I'm really, really thankful for that. So Scott had mentioned the Conservation Innovation Grant cover crop project that was funded to UVM, but our primary partner on that grant was the Farmers Watershed Alliance. And the whole goal of this project is to look at modifications to how we grow corn to get better cover crops. And it's a pretty complex project, and we have a great farmer involvement even during COVID. And there's lots of results that are going to come out very soon. We're really working on that. But I think this, and I think Scott shared this slide, although it didn't come up on my screen. But this early data that we got back, maybe it wasn't so much a surprise to me, but I think it was really a highlight so far of the project, where we looked at the soil health of the 60 fields that we're working with. And these are what most people would say, quote unquote, are conventional corn fields. For many people, this is people dislike corn. They think it's bad for the soil and so on and so forth. And this data was really telling of how much work farmers have been doing on their cornfields, and the soil health of those fields is phenomenal. And I just, you can see this dotted line right here is the average. So the average of the 60 conventional cornfields was right around 80%, where 80 indicates, based on the Cornell Soil Health Test, optimum. It's like healthy, very healthy soil. And the majority of all of those fields were almost as high as you can get. And you can see we have fields that fall below that, but they're still in what's considered, again, excellent. And two fields, actually one field out of the 60, maybe two, really could use some work. This is like caution, there's some things you can do. Now, here we have this farm here, a couple of cornfields, this one in particular, it's like 95 was the score. Like, almost perfect. Now, this really just indicates to me, and should indicate to everybody else, that this is really some of the outcomes of all the work that everybody has been doing, and first and foremost, the farmers. And it was so exciting to me to see this, that what it's really resonated to me is that we really need to not stop, but get a handle on where we're at with soil health in Vermont. We're talking about it all the time. We're talking about, oh, we need to do better, we need to do more, but we don't even know where we're starting at right now. We have come a long way. And as Scott had mentioned, we did just apply for a grant, which unfortunately was not funded. We just found out. But we want to benchmark soil health in our state. And I feel like really before we can continue to make more improvements at a score of 95, we just really need to know where we're at. And so, we have an initiative to make this happen. And I hope, we've been having this discussion with a number of people, but this is where we're headed. We need to get this baseline. There was a lot of talk about stacked practices. A few people mentioned it. And so I wanted to share this slide as well. And there's a lot going on here. This is respiration, which is a measure of biological activity, one of the soil health biological activity measurements. And I want to show you down here, these are fields that have, maybe no-till, maybe cover crops, but no manure. Okay. And they have the lowest respiration rates, some of the lowest biological activity, even if they're no-till, even if they're conventional till with cover crops. Okay. Now, when we start putting more practices together, especially when we start adding manure, so SM is spring manure, CT is conventional tillage, WRCC is winter rye cover crop. You can see as we start to put these practices together in certain ways, we're really increasing the biological activity far beyond what we see with a single practice. So if we're just using no-till down here without manure, without a cover crop, biological activity is far lower than if we're using no-till with manure, or no-till with manure and a cover crop. Okay. And I also want to point out that this is conventional tillage with manure and a cover crop. So there's lots of ways to, produce healthy soils, different ways that are going to be more suitable to one farm to another. But what's really important is that we're going to get a bigger bang for our buck if we are stacking those practices. And we're seeing that. And that's what we're seeing in those fields that are scoring almost 100 on their soil health test. Here's the PF is perennial forage, so you can see where we're at there. And of course, we generally consider perennial forage the gold standard, right? So we are rivaling that with stacked practices. Here's aggregate stability, different rotations, different things going on here. But again, here's continuous corn down here. For those of you that aren't familiar with aggregate stability, it's kind of the resiliency of the soil. So the more resilient the soil is, the less prone it is to this condition right here, which is a lot of runoff, you get a lot of breaking up of the soil particles, erosion. This is bad for the crops, bad for the biology. And then here you see better aggregation right here. This is a field that's first year out of sod. So you can see, even when we just add, I don't want to say even, but just a simple rotation, this doesn't have any manure in it. This is a long-term study that I've been doing for years. And you can see just adding hay into the rotation with corn, you're still maintaining better aggregate stability. Now, if you look at that same rotation with no-till, you can see it goes up even more. And then, of course, you're comparing that to perennial forage, which is generally around 80% or higher. So again, we are achieving really high levels of soil health on our fields. For those that we may not be achieving quite as high, I feel like we know what we need to do to get there. And I think that's a really important point, and that there's so many people that are already here or even here, and we haven't set that baseline to then move the next mile. And we've talked about this in other presentations. So Alyssa White, who may be on this call, I don't know, many of you know, she is now a postdoctorate researcher on my team, and she's been trying to pull together some of the available data sets. And thanks to Vicki Drew, who passed this data set on to us, and also the Ag Environmental Testing Lab, you can see here that Vermont, on average has about 5% organic matter across hay, pasture, and crop fields. And these are, large data sets here, and they match up. which is really interesting. This is from the UVM Soil Test Lab. This is from a very large NRCS database. And here's the rest of the country, right? 3.2%. So I've made this point before. We are doing really well. We need to document where we are at right now, and then just like go for the gusto, because we know what we can do. So many farms are successful right now doing it. And we need to take stock where we're at, and then we can just further show our outcomes. And so here's just a quick example. And again, this is, I don't want to say it's back of the napkin completely, but it's really just shows you, where we can go with this if we have a baseline. So how much CO2 could a 0.4% increase in organic matter content in the top 30 centimeters of cornfields in Vermont sequester? So if we take the hectares of corn in Vermont and assume a bulk density, if we increase organic matter by 0.4%, which I just want you to know that's a pretty big increase. It doesn't seem like a lot. We can sequester, 985,000 and some change metric tons of CO2. If you go to the 2012 Vermont greenhouse gas inventory, agriculture's footprint is 840,000 metric tons of CO2. So again, knowing where we're at, we can, I believe, achieve these goals that we want, but we really need to get that baseline set now so that we can continue to show what farms are doing. So this is just a little schematic I put together from data that I have. Continuous corn, you add a cover crop, you get about a plus 0.10% increase in organic matter. And this is just winter rye. This really is probably a 0.08. I rounded it up, but you do get a little increase here. Rotating, again, you're going to get, about a 0.4. You start stacking these practices. You have no-till in a rotation with cover crop, you're going up 0.75. And then, in a perennial forage, this in plus 0.75, plus 1, plus 1.5. Different management can increase these numbers in different ways. But again, the point is we can reach that 0.4. Not that hard, but again, we got to know where we're starting from. So we're doing a great job. It'd be really nice to kind of document that and then just keep moving and showing off. I mean, I feel like that's what we're doing right now. We're really showing off what we're doing. Kirsten or Jeff, just cut me off because, I could just go on. That was like the most exciting thing. And then everything else is like the frosting on it, frosting on the cake. Discovery Acres is a new project that we just launched, and many of you have already heard about this. It is in partnership with UVM Extension. Many of us at UVM Extension, Joshua Faulkner and Jeff Sanders and Lindsay Rule, and then Kirsten Workman's on our advisory board, many of the people in the audience, many of the farmers, and that's the goal. We have this on-farm experiment and this research model that engages many stakeholders to make decisions. So what we want to do with this project is be measuring the practices and the outcomes of those practices based on input from the farming community and our other stakeholders. So this experiment or this project is in St. Albans Bay. It's in the Jewett Brook. It's on Covington clay. And I know it's not as heavy as the clay in Addison County. I've been told that a million times. And it's on an operating dairy farm. And it's a really exciting project, and it's one of a kind in the country, actually. And, it's exciting that it's here in Vermont. We have 2 tile drained plots, and we have 2 untiled drained plots, and we're collecting surface runoff, and we're also collecting what's coming out of the tile. And the plan, again, is to install the practices that we want to evaluate on this farm and see what's happening with water quality, soil health, and a bunch of other measurements as well. So this just kicked off. We installed the tile exactly how we wanted it in the fields. We have the edge of field monitoring all set up and ready to go. And this year we'll be growing corn, but we're making decisions now about what is it that we want to look at, especially considering what I just showed you, where we already know that farmers they're doing no-till, they're doing cover crops, they're doing them together. Do we need to look at that, or do we need to look at what's next? You know, where are we going to push the envelope to do even better? And so, you know, we'll be figuring that out. But again, it's a really exciting project. It's also connected us nationally to the Discovery Farms network, which is really exciting. And we just had a meeting with them yesterday, and they're trying to start farmer watershed groups as well. So they're really looking to us here to help them with that. All right. My last thing I wanted to talk about was another really big project that we're a part of here in Vermont, which sometimes feels a little bit humbling, but the goal of the project, or the title, is a cover crop network for enhancing the sustainability of U.S. cropping systems. It's precision sustainable ag. It's huge. You can see how many people are involved, including us here at UVM. And what's really exciting to me, and somebody had already mentioned this has been mentioned a couple of times, like, you know, we're here. There's so much going on around us, and just being able to connect to that, learn, and bring it back here, the information, the technology, as well as share what we're doing here. I mean, there are other states where they're just starting to cover crop, you know, and we are really ahead. Our farmers are really ahead. And so just bringing in some of this other expertise and information is really exciting. So I'll kind of skip a little bit of this, but you can see the whole concept of this is to have this humongous farmer network. And so these are all the farms that are participating in this cover crop project. I don't want to say in the entire country, because you can see it kind of gets cut off right here. And that's really exciting. So the little dots are all the farms that have been participating or will start participating in the next year. And these green circles are the research farms. So, you know, normally how this gets done is there's just these green circles, right? Primarily. And then in some states like ours, we also have a network of farms that we work with to collect data and learn. The power of this is that we're all connected and we're all sharing this data, all the farms and all the research stations. So when somebody says, how much nitrogen is my cover crop going to give me? And my answer is, well, you know, it depends, right? It depends on the weather and the soil type and the blah, 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 blah. Well, this is starting to take the it depends out of it, because there's thousands of data points, thousands of environments, thousands of not thousands, hundreds of participants. So all the scenarios that we don't know because we've only studied it here in one spot is becoming less of a barrier. And you add technology to that, and then in real time, when a farmer wants to know how much nitrogen am I getting from this right now, they're going to know. It's going to be like that. And this is the project that's starting that off. So we have several farmers with the Farmers Watershed Alliance that are participating in this national project. And it's actually pretty simple. It's just like cover crop versus no cover crop. And we're setting up these systems, these data logging systems out in their fields with sensors and some decomposition bags. And the sensors and the data is being sent to a node, and then that node sends it off into the cloud, and then the cloud sends it to a huge computer model with all the data flowing in, and then that goes to the farmer so that they know what's happening. And here's just a little picture of it. But again, these sensors are going out in these research sites. The sensors wake up and they send data to the data logger every minute. And then, once an hour, the data logger wakes up and it sends it to the central receiver that then pumps it into the cloud and sends it to the big computer model that then says, given the temperature and the this and the that and the this is how much nitrogen should be released. And, this wasn't possible before, but it is now. And so what we're doing is we're calibrating these models with tons of data, real data coming off from farms from all over the country. So just a few pictures of all of this. Yeah, it's crazy and it's really exciting to be a part of it. So this project is also using lots of other technologies to be helping us manage cover crops, from remote sensing to it's like these crazy photo boxes. I mean, we're taking pictures of the cover crop and looking at artificial intelligence to look at weeds. And it's just incredible. So it's exciting to be able to connect with this larger network and learn from them and bring that back here as well in a way that's becoming more relevant because of these kinds of technologies. So with that, I'll pass it on to the next person.
Thanks, Heather. Very exciting. And I know everybody's excited to have you looking out for them. Kirsten Workman, you're up next. And Kirsten, I'd like to give a recap of what's going on with the group down in Middlebury.
Thanks, Jeff. It's always great, I think, to follow a presentation by Heather because, as one of our participants mentioned, it's very inspiring and exciting to hear about all the work going on. And I think that you all should be very proud of that work that you've done as farmers in Vermont. I think about even as short ago as 5 years ago, 10 years ago and beyond, what seemed like baby steps has really blossomed into a huge and exciting landscape here in Vermont. And so I'm excited to be part of that. I'm excited to be connected with our farmer watershed organizations, which, as many folks have alluded to tonight, are really the backbone of the work that we do. And that's especially true in Extension, and especially true in our Middlebury office, where we really rely on the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition as sort of our advisory group to give us information and feedback on the work we're doing. And we're always hoping to be meeting the needs of our producers. In the picture here, I'll just say that I miss seeing everyone in person. I miss getting to bring people from across the country to the amazing farms doing the amazing things that Heather was just alluding to on the ground here at Blue Spruce Farm, where we're kicking off a really great project, which I will talk about. I also know we're getting late, so we're gonna move along. Let's see if I can get my computer to move slides, which it doesn't seem to want to be doing. Bear with me. There we go. So just a quick update in general with COVID and social distancing. I just want to remind folks that our office is still here to serve you. We do have a sort of a limited capacity in our office, mostly by appointment, but if you have needs or services, we can definitely make that happen. We're still accepting your soil and manure tests. I still run those up once or twice a week if they come up. And we do still have the Champlain Valley Crop Soil and Pasture team. So Jeff, who you've met tonight, obviously, who sort of runs the program down there. Cheryl Cicero, who's our grazing specialist, is fantastic. I'm going to share one of the programs she's working on. Myself, an agronomy outreach specialist. Kristen Williams, who actually will be doing some transitioning away from the office, but still working here with our group. Karen Gallett, who most of you will know is our sort of front door and face of our group down there. And I put Josh Faulkner on there as well. I kind of think of him as an honorary member, and you'll hear about lots of projects that he's got his hands on, especially in Addison County coming up, that are just getting installed and moving forward. So sort of the bread and butter work that we've been doing is still going on, assisting farmers with agronomic issues. We have a lot of nutrient management planning assistance that we work with folks on, compliance with environmental regulations. We've done some big lift in terms of assisting farmers with grant applications, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think we've helped farmers get their hands on through the Beyond Equip, so capital equipment assistance programs, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, working lands grants, things like that. If you want to kind of stay in the loop, you can sign up for our newsletter on our website. We send that out kind of quarterly, and then we give email updates when there's special events going on. And we do have sort of this focus on soil health, water quality, all sort of through the lens of conservation agronomy, while trying to keep our farm partners profitable from a business standpoint too. And then we do some research and demonstration projects that are really focused on locally led priorities and applications of these farm practices that we've been talking about tonight. So I did want to take just a minute. Cheryl tends to sort of lay low, I think, in some of these presentations. And I just want to share one program that she's been working with. So Cheryl is our grazing outreach professional in our office. She's also a fantastic grazer herself. Her and her husband, Mark, do hundreds of acres of grazing in the Cornwall vicinity. And she's got a new, not new, but a kind of growing project through the Northeast Dairy Innovation Center, where she's helping farmers through this transition to grazing. And I think especially now with the timing and economics of farming that have been going on, as well as this focus on soil health, that it's really a good time to start thinking outside the box. And so she's sort of broadening her net from just helping organic producers or farmers that were already grazing improve their grazing management. She's really reaching out to farms who might benefit from bringing grazing into their operations, whether that's raising heifers or even, incorporating some of their milkers out on pasture too. And there's a lot of benefits there. And so she's got a program that has this cohort of producers. They share information with each other. You can see them there doing a pasture walk at one of the farms. But she also provides them with a lot of technical assistance. And then there are some financial incentives associated with that as well. So if you're interested in that, I have Cheryl's email down at the bottom there. And I just also wanted to touch on some issues that are sort of bubbling up to the top as we kind of move forward. Of course, we've heard tonight this focus on water quality, soil health, nutrient management, and what I call conservation agronomy. And one of the things that I think is so exciting is we've sort of taken this narrow focus of water quality, which is sort of built on itself and then it was soil health. And now we're talking about integrated pest management. Now we're looking beyond phosphorus. And I think it's really blossomed into this very comprehensive system-based approach that we're seeing here in Vermont, which is very exciting. We're also looking at, innovation. You heard, Heather talking about some really innovative things with precision technology, but we're also looking at sort of lowercase I innovation, which, is just sort of what are the small things we can do that can be very new and exciting to get more out of what we're doing on our farms. Another big piece, as you heard with our Farm 24 VT event, is just sort of this idea of public perceptions of agriculture. And I think one of the things that the pandemic brought to light is both the importance of our food system and also the fragility of our food system. And so if we can help our neighbors and our consumers understand what you're all doing on your farms, that is really important. And that's really where I think UVM Extension can kind of step up to the plate and help folks. And one of the ways, you guys, again, I'm sort of, when you're at the end of the night, right, you're repeating what everyone has already said. But these conservation practice surveys that get put into the partner database are very important to help us share that story. And I'll just give you one tidbit of how that works. I had a farmer who was hoping to write sort of an editorial talking, about the benefits of cover cropping and how well we've been doing in Vermont. And we know big picture, but that farmer asked me, do we know how many acres of cover crop there are in Addison County? And so I said, well, we don't have a really good number, but I went to the partner database to see what I could pull out. And I got a number, which was good, but I knew it was not comprehensive. So I just think of the future, if we can have all the work that's being done on the ground every year, we could so quickly in a minute pull that information out and say exactly how many acres of cover crops are happening by county, by farm, by state, which can be really powerful when we're sharing with the public. Another issue that I think is going to be really important in 2021 is the use of pesticides. I think Lake Champlain Basin Program is using, has that as a priority topic for them this year, as well as the legislature will likely have some bills in front of them. And so I think it's really important for us to communicate sort of the fact versus fiction and really understand best practices in integrated pest management. So I know that the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition is going to be focusing on that moving forward. And I think that will be an important piece as well. And then also, widening our lens on nutrients to not just be looking at phosphorus, which is easy to do in the Champlain Valley. We're so focused on that and for good reason, but I think we're broadening that out to really now look at other things like nitrogen has become, really important. And as we start to do more of this field-based runoff, water quality analysis, we're going to be looking at that. When we look at cropping production, we're going to be looking at nitrogen efficiencies. And I think even some of Jeff's work, we've noticed, when he was on sabbatical, looking at some of these other nutrients like sulfur and things that we've sort of ignored in the name of phosphorus. So look for that. And then out of the Middlebury area in our office, there's just some research projects I wanted to highlight. First of all, is there's a lot of tile drain research, not just in Middlebury, but across the state. But just that we've been touching on, the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets has funded a large statewide sort of ongoing grab sampling where every 2 weeks, farms across the state have volunteered to have tile outlets monitored. So we've been continuing to do that. We have 10 outlets that we monitor. I think there's 40 plus across the state. With Joshua Faulkner, there's a Sea Grant research project in Addison County. And then we're going to talk about this conservation effects assessment project, which also involves some tile monitoring. And then we have some farms who are doing their own monitoring through the Caring Dairy Prove It project program and just on their own. We've been working with the Northwest Crops and Soils team on some solar corridors, and we hope to continue to get funding looking at these sort of wider row spacing, not only to encourage cover crop growth, but also can we incorporate forage crops into our annual crops, both for soil health, but also for harvesting for forage. We do have a new project that we're not completely allowed to talk about yet, but it is sort of another project, sort of like Heather's Precision Ag project, which is becoming a national sort of networking project. Well, there'll be universities and farmers from across the state looking at manure management and soil health in direct relation to the Dairy Net Zero initiative moving forward. And then I do want to highlight, so grassland manure injection has become really important. You saw from Scott's presentation and Heather's this idea of injecting manure in grass as well as in our corn ground. And grasslands are by far our highest acreage crop in Vermont and typically give manure spread on the surface without being incorporated. And so this became, I think, a high priority for us to look at. We often were looking at corn as a problem, but really when you look at the impact of surface applications of manure on hay ground, we were starting to understand more and more of those implications. And so these pieces of equipment that can get manure underneath the surface, even in our perennial crops, I think are very exciting. The Agency of Agriculture gave us a clean water grant a few years back to purchase this drag hose equipment here with an injector. And we had really great success with that project. We had almost 5,000 acres where that got used over the course of 2 years. And so we were able to acquire some additional funding from Vermont's Natural Resource Conservation Service to continue that work and actually look at it through the lens of runoff reduction. And so we'll be working again with Josh Faulkner and Jeff Sanders across several, a couple farms to be analyzing not just the crop's response to injected manure, but how much do we reduce nutrient runoff by injecting that manure. In addition to that, one of our manure applicators has some precision nutrient sensing equipment that he's been able to get that has live nutrient sensing as they're spreading that manure. And so we'll also be analyzing kind of the accuracy of that sensing, but also what is that long-term implication over a farm's ability to spread their manure in an effective way. And what does that look like to not only their nutrient management plan, but their phosphorus index and sort of the practical application of how we get manure out on farms and to do that in the most efficient and effective way possible. And then the last project I want to highlight is actually the one that I'm going to then hand the baton off also to Laura Johnson, another extension colleague of ours. And Josh Faulkner was on the call, although we're losing folks as we get later, but this conservation effects assessment project is a really exciting project. Much like Discovery Acres, it's unique in that it has some long-term funding and effort behind it. And this is sort of linking watershed scale water quality data, where we're actually capturing flow and water quality data from surface waters like the Dead Creek and Little Otter Creek. And we're trying to tie it and link it back to conservation practices on the ground. And so it is Dead Creek and Little Otter Creek. In addition to the monitoring and sort of the assessment of practices, Josh was also able to get funding to do some in-field studies, which I think are going to be very important. So edge of field, getting surface and subsurface drainage, and looking at the effect of stacked practices and how that relates to runoff on a whole field sort of basis. So there's about 23 of these projects across the state, or across the country rather. And so it's great to have some of these in Vermont and in the Lake Champlain Basin. And so again, this links back to these conservation practice surveys, because we're going to be asking farmers to share with us what they're doing and what conservation practices are really on the ground. And to do that, Laura Johnson, who has been working out of our St. Johnsbury office, is going to be helping us do some of that work. We've also done a lot of soil health testing already through that project in partnership with Conservation District staff. And so hopefully we can add those soil health tests to the ones that Heather was talking about, to really get a good picture across the state, which could be exciting to kind of merge those kind of projects together. So I will stop there because it's 8:45, and I know that Laura has a few words to share with us too.
Thank you. Let me bring up my share. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, everybody here is more of a night owl than I am. We're approaching my bedtime, so I'll keep this brief, but I just wanted to sort of provide a recap and look into the future of what we're working on at the Center for Sustainable Agriculture and on the eastern side of the state here. So I'm going to start by just looking back at the past few years where we've been working on the Long Island Sound Watershed Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which some folks have talked about in different parts of the state already tonight. And we just closed that out in December, and I just wanted to shout out to USDA and the NRCS for their support in that project. And I'm going to go through some of those highlights right now, but we were focusing from the Center of Sustainable Agriculture on the nutrient management and soil health component of the RCPP program. And we had a really great team led by Jen Colby, who is the pasture program coordinator for the Center for Sustainable Ag and UVM Extension, and worked with a lot of wonderful partners through the multi-year project, including the Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance, BGFA, and UNH Extension and others, and of course the farmers. And worked on all types of farms, dairy and non-dairy livestock, vegetable crop, and a few beekeepers in there. And we approached this with a team-based technical assistance on management practices, and most of the folks that we were working with were focusing in on prescribed grazing, forage and biomass planting, tarping and mulching, and cover cropping especially. And we were able to cover ground in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts under this project. Most of the farms we were working with were in Vermont. We had 12 in New Hampshire and then 4 in Massachusetts, all within the Long Island Sound watershed. We had a caseload of about 215 farms, and 88 of those farms were had implemented conservation practices by the end of our project. So it was a great success. And then in addition to that, we just wrapped up the Vermont Grazing and Livestock Virtual Conference in partnership with the Vermont Grass Farmers Association. And hopefully some of you were there. And if you weren't, the presentations are still online. But we had a really successful turnout at that conference with over 200 participants, which is what we normally see in person as well. So that was really satisfying. And then we're still out there to support folks and on soil health practices and in any sort of grant applications that might be needed. And I wanted to just highlight one research project that we will be beginning this season. We were funded a SARE grant, a partnership grant to explore low phosphorus wool pellets as fertilizer and a soil conditioner for vegetables. And we are partnering with one farm from the Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance to look at this project. And Kimberly Hagan and Susie Hodgson have really developed this idea here in the state of Vermont of identifying for sheep farmers this market option for pelletizing raw wool and to use it as fertilizer. So they did a pilot field project at the Catamount Farm up at the UVM campus, looking at, this is just a side-by-side trial of fall planted broccoli. The row on the left was grower standard fertility, and then the row on the right receives wool pellets fertilizer. So we're just going to be looking at looking into this more with this partnership grant. There'll be one trial up in Burlington at the Hort Farm, and then 2 trials in the Connecticut River Watershed. We'll be doing that this season, 2021. And I think that was all I was going to talk to you about today. So thank you very much. And that's it. How do I stop share?
And there we have it. The end of the agenda, except for what's your questions, comments? We got a few minutes left.
I just want to point out, Jeff, we did had one question earlier about the Vermont Environmental Stewardship Program, which folks had heard about. And that question was for Anson, and he did answer it saying that it's sort of been rolled into the pay for performance program now. So it would still be Sonia Howlett, it sounds like, would be, if folks are interested in that, to reach out to her. Is that true, Anson?
Yeah, that's the contact. I think the pay for performance project that they've got going, though, is specific to phosphorus reduction, which is different than what was talked about with payment for ecosystem services.
That's
Yeah,
correct,
yeah.
Allison. And we'll be reconvening the payment for ecosystem services working group in February, likely the 3rd week. And we anticipate that we will be giving an overview of all of these programs and where they're at. We recognize that it can be confusing with all that's going on. So Sonia is the main contact for that program.
Thank you, Allison. I finally got off mute.
And we have had a couple questions. Just to remind folks, we did record this meeting and presentations, so we'll be sharing that with folks who attended the meeting, and likely we'll put it on our websites as well. And we did also have a few questions about sharing slides. So if you have a particular presentation you want to see slides for, just let Catherine or I know, and we can reach out to presenters to ask for those as well.
Jeff. This is Paul Stanley. And this is a really amazing turnout and program presentation. And it brings to mind some of the pioneers in all of this. Number one is your host tonight, Jeff Carter. Another one that comes to mind that I wish that she was on tonight is Sue Hawkins. And she actually implemented a farmer watershed group. Things went downhill. And now we're kind of picking up the ball and getting this going again. And a couple of the farmers that I see on that were along with Sue is Eric Clifford and Dave Conant. And there may be others, but another one up in Franklin County that was a major pioneer and worked with Extension is Sarah Cushing. So this is really amazing to see all of this happening. And another one I would like to point out, and I see Anson on the screen, and we've talked a lot about this and working with the Franklin Watershed Committee for many years. Please, we need more unison between our watershed groups and our Farmer Watershed Alliance groups. We need to stop standing off in each corner of the ring and fighting each other and getting on board with that common denominator that's between all of us is improved water quality and improved environment. Thank you.
Well, thanks for those comments, Paul. You're dating yourself, though.
Yeah, that's the problem with that, Jeff.
Yeah, well, when we started that Champlain Valley Crop Management Association, that was back in the late 80s, I think.
Yeah.
Same
Sue
stuff.
brought all her books to our office, so the legacy
stuff.
Yeah.
And I will shout out that it's always a partnership between Extension and farmers. Because Eric Clifford and I started that first association in the late 80s. And then he came in and he sat in my office again about 7 or 8 years ago and said, we got to do something. And that started the Farmer Coalition down here. So
yeah,
without the farmers, we're dead in the water.
Yeah. Great work, guys.
So go ahead, anybody.
You can also unmute yourself if you're feeling brave and ask a question too.
Okay, if I don't hear anything else, then
I'd just like to say one thing, Jeff. You know, as you mentioned, Eric, has kind of spearheaded our whole organization that day that he talked to you. I'm sorry, that's a beagle that just got brought into my house for the night. I think he was instrumental in helping us get started here. And I think we're proud of where we've come in 7 years, and thank all the support from Extension, particularly you and Kirsten and the rest of your staff. We wouldn't be where we are without you and the support from NRCS and all the conservation districts and everything. So I think we got a big team here. Jed Davis has been looking for this to happen, this annual event, not particularly an annual event, but for the 3 farmer watershed groups to get together now for years. He's always got us together at the farm show. And I would just like to send my gratitude to him. I think he really helped motivate this. And I think we can do a lot with the 3 groups working together. So.
okay, with that, and it is, what do you got? 1 minute if you want to speak up.
The tie's off, Jeff. Let's call it a night.
Well, I sure appreciate everybody's efforts to put this all together and all the speakers and all the people who came here. So I think this is great. So thank you all.
Super work, Jeff. Thank you.